Hi everybody, this is Crystal. So today I'm going to show you how to make this bag here. It's approximately 14, if you count the bobbles across, by 10, just approximately. It's got store-bought gold handles. I got those at Amazon, which I'll put a link below in the description box if you want to get them. If not, you're more than welcome to use any type of handle you want. These O-rings are 1-inch O-rings. I got these actually off an old bag that I picked up at the Goodwill store, but you can buy these online also. But remember, they are 1 inch if you want to do that. But remember, making your own handles will look just fine too. It's actually not really that hard. It's got some drop stitches, some bobbles, a little bit of ribbing up here, but otherwise it's pretty easy. So it's got the gold sparkle in the yarn. Let's go ahead and get started on this. Alrighty, for this project, I use a Lion brand Woolies Thick and Quick. It is a super bulky number 6. It is an acrylic wool blend, and there are 92 yards per ball of yarn. And this is my 3rd ball, so I use a little bit more than half of my 3rd one. The color I'm using is Starlight. It's the cream colored with the sparkles, but of course you can use any color that you want. You do not have to use this brand of yarn. I would recommend you using a super bulky 6 unless you know how to resize things. Other than that, any type of super bulky 6 will work. The bulky 6 did make a nice thick well-made bag, so it is recommended for that, but not necessary if you can resize things. And then I'm going to be using a size N, which is a 9mm crochet hook, and sometimes ends are 10mm. Either one will work. Alright, and I just want to take a second, as always, to ask you not to forget to subscribe to my channel. If you look in the lower right hand corner right now, there'll be a little red subscribe button. If you click on that, you'll never miss any of my updates. I do, yarn reviews, crochet tutorials, lots of giveaways, yarn shopping, yarn hauls. It's a lot of fun, and it's always free to watch any of my content on my channel. There's no charge. And also, if you like this video, if you could give it a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Now, I'm going to start out with a chain of 66. Now, as for resizing, if you're using a smaller yarn, if you know how to do that, the chain needs to be an even multiple of 3. So I'm doing 66. So it's an even multiple of 3. 69 is a multiple of 3, but that's an odd multiple of 3. So that wouldn't work. 72 is an even multiple of 3, so that would work if you know what I mean by that. It has to be an even multiple of 3. But if you got the super bulky like I do, so go ahead and start out with a chain of 66. Alright, once you get your chain of 66 done, we're just going to follow it down without twisting your chain, and we're going to slip stitch to form one large ring. So we're working from the bottom of the bag up, and then at the end we'll sew the bottom together. So go ahead and slip stitch it shut, like that. And then we're going to chain 1. And now we're going to go right back into that same spot that we slip stitched, and we're going to single crochet. And now I'm going to work around, and I'm going to put 1 single crochet in every single stitch all the way around my large ring here. Just like this. So I'm going to continue working 1 single crochet in every stitch until I get back over here to my starting point. Alright, I've made it back around, and you should have a total of 66 stitches, and you want to go ahead and slip stitch into your first single crochet. Not this chain one here, but the first single crochet. Like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that row of single crochet 2 more times, so we'll have a total of 3 rows of single crochet. So we're just going to chain 1, we're going to go back into the same stitch and single crochet, and then we're just going to work 1 single crochet in every stitch around for 2 more rows. But you want to make sure you end every row with a slip stitch, and then you start again. We're not going to work with a stitch marker and work continually around. We're going to slip stitch at the end of every round. Now when you make it back around, you should have a total of 66 stitches still. And then you just slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet, and every stitch around again. Alright, I have made it to the end of round 3, and I have 3 rows of single crochet. You want to go in with the slip stitch into your first single crochet, or make sure you're not going into that chain 1 or your stitch count will be off. You should still have 66 stitches. Now for round 4, we're going to start doing our drop stitches. So we're going to chain 1, we're going to go back into the same stitch and single crochet, and then we're going to single crochet into the next stitch. So that was 2 single crochets in a row. Now the next stitch will be our drop stitch. So what we do is in the next stitch, instead of going into the top of it, we're going to go down 2 rows and do a single crochet drop stitch. So right here is where we would normally put our stitch, but instead we're going to count down 2 rows. So 1, 2, and at the bottom of that second row right here, you want to insert your hook right here, and you want to grab your yarn and draw up a big loop like that to where you're about even with this right here, not to where it's tight though, to where it's still loose. Yarn over and go through just like a regular single crochet. So there's our first single crochet drop stitch. So now we're going to put 1 single crochet again into the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2, and now we're going to do our drop stitch again, or some people call them spike stitches, I guess. So here's the stitch we would normally go into. We want to count down 2 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and this spot right here is where we'll insert our hook. Draw up a loop, big tall loop like that, and then yarn over and do a regular single crochet. So now we have 2 of them, and that's what we're going to repeat all the way around. So 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. Now the next one, we'll do our drop stitch. So here's where we would insert our hook. We go down 2 rows, 1, 2, and right down here after that second one is where you would insert your hook. Insert it in there, draw up a tall loop, and then go ahead and do a normal single crochet like that. Again, 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2, and then we'll do our drop into the next. So here's where we would do our next stitch. So count down 2, 1, 2. Right here is where we'll put our hook. Draw up a big loop, and then single crochet. So I'm going to repeat this pattern all the way around until I get back to the beginning. 1 into the next 2 stitches. There's 1, 2, and now we'll do our drop stitch again. Right here is where we put our stitch. Count down 2, 1, 2. At the bottom of that one, and insert your hook, draw up a loop, and then just do a regular single crochet. So I'm going to repeat that pattern all the way around until I get back to the beginning. Alright, I've made it to the end of round 4. Now your last stitch should have been a spike stitch, and you still should have 66 stitches. Now we're going to end round 4 by slip stitching into our first single crochet. Not the chain 1, but the first single crochet. And this is what it looks like. There's 2 single crochets in between every spike stitch. Okay, and we're at the beginning. Now, if the beginning looks a little funny, like there's 3 single crochets, there's not. That's just that chain 1. And don't worry about that. When we sew it together, that'll be the same, and you won't even notice that. So what we're going to do now, for rounds 5, 6, and 7, it's just rounds of single crochet again. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to start by working a single crochet back into the very first stitch. And then we're going to work around, putting 1 single crochet in every stitch again. Even on top of that drop stitch or that spike stitch, we just go right into it and single crochet. And we're going to do this. This is round 5. And we're going to do it for round 6 and for round 7. 1 single crochet in every stitch. You should always have 66 stitches still at the end of every round. So when I get to the end of round 5, I'm just going to slip stitch into my first single crochet, chain 1, and then I'm going to work round 6, 1 single crochet in every stitch. Round 7 will be the same thing, 1 single crochet in every stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up my 3 rounds of 1 single crochet in every stitch, and I will meet back up with you at the end of round 7. Alright, I've made it to the end of round 7, so I did the 3 more rows of single crochet. Now round 8, we're going to do our drop spike stitches again, but we're going to do it where they're kind of in between the previous ones, not way down here, but up here in between them. So what we're going to do is chain 1, and we're going to go back into the same stitch and single crochet. Now the next stitch is going to be the spike stitch or the drop stitch. So here it is. We're going to go down 2, 1, 2. So right here is where we insert our hook, and then we draw up a loop and do our single crochet like that. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2, and then the next one will be our drop stitch. So right here's our next one. We go down 2 rows, 1, 2, and at the bottom of it we do our drop stitch. So we insert our hook right into here and draw up a loop and go ahead and do our single crochet. And you can see that the drop stitches are staggering these ones. So it's kind of the same as round 4. we just started different. So now we're going to do 1 single crochet again into the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2, and then the next one we're going to do our drop. So we're going to go down 2 stitches. So here's the one where we would normally go, 1, 2. That little spot right there is where we put our hook and do our drop stitch. Pull it up and single crochet, and then we repeat 1 single crochet in the next 2. There's 1 and 2, and the next one we drop. So right here is where we go into, count down 2 stitches, 1, 2, and at the bottom of that one right there is where we put our hook and do our spike or our drop stitch, just like that. And you see they are staggered now, and that's what we're going to repeat all the way around. 1 single into the next 2, so there's 1 and 2, and drop down 2 stitches. So here's where we would work it. So we go 1, 2, and right at the bottom of that one in that hole we stick our hook, draw up a loop, and single crochet. 1 single into the next 2, there's 1, 2. Next one we drop, so go down 2 rows right at the next stitch, 1, 2, right there. And I'm just going to keep repeating this pattern all the way around until I get to the end of round 8. Okay, I've made it to the end of round 8. I did my drop stitch here. I had 1 stitch left, and then we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into our first single crochet. And you still should have your 66 stitches. Now round 9, I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to go back into that same stitch, and I'm going to single crochet. So rounds 9 and 10 are going to be the same thing. They're going to be 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. So we're working on round 9 right now. I'm working 1 single in every stitch. When I get to the end, I'll have 66 stitches still. And I want to go ahead and slip stitch in my first single crochet, and then I'll just repeat round 9 again for round 10, working 1 single crochet in every stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and do rounds 9 and 10, 1 single crochet in every stitch, and I'll meet back up with you at the end of round 10. Alright, I've made it to the end of round 10, and I have my 66 stitches still. Now I'm going to end by slip stitching into my first single crochet. Now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to turn my work. So now I'm going to be working on the back side of my work. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put a single crochet right there back in that same stitch. Like that. And I'm going to do a bobble into the next stitch. So this is how I work the bobble. I'm going to yarn over, go into the next stitch, and I'm going to draw up a loop. And I'm going to yarn over and go through the first 2 loops on my hook. Now I want to do that 3 times total. So that would be number 1. I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, go into the same stitch, draw up a loop, and yarn over, go through the first 2 again. That would be 2 times. One more time, I'm going to yarn over, go into the same stitch, draw up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2. That'd be 3 times. Then I'll have 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and go through all 4, pull it tight, and I'm going to single crochet directly into the next stitch. And if you flip your work back around, you'll see you made a bobble. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to bobble into the next stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, go in, drop a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2 loops. I'm going to do that 3 times. So that was number 1. Again, yarn over, go in, drop a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2. That's 2 times. Yarn over, go in again, drop a loop, yarn over, go for the first 2, 3 times. I'll have 4 loops that remain. Yarn over, go through all 4, give it a little tug to pull it tight, single crochet directly into the next stitch. Just like that. And now you got 2 bobbles there on the other side. And I'm going to repeat this pattern all the way around. So I'm going to bobble again into the next stitch. Single crochet into the next stitch, just like that. Bobble into the next, single crochet into the next. So I'm going to repeat this pattern, bobble, crochet, and then single crochet, bobble, crochet, single crochet, all the way around until I get back to my starting point. All right, I've made it to the end of round 11. Now your last stitch should have been a bobble. So I bobbled in that last stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and end by slip stitching into my first single crochet. And you should still have 66 stitches, counting the bobbles and the single crochets. So now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to turn my work back around to the front, and now you can see all those bobbles. And now what I'm going to do is work 1 single crochet back into that very same stitch. And then I'm going to work around, working 1 single crochet in every stitch. So it'd be 1 single crochet on top of the next bobble, and then 1 single crochet into the next single crochet, and then it'd be 1 single crochet on top of the next bobble. And if you take your bobble and kind of just flip it a bit, you'll see right there on top where the top of it is. and that's where you single crochet into. Then 1 single crochet right here into that next single crochet, and then 1 single crochet on top of the next bobble. So just take it, flip it, and right there is where you go. And 1 single into the next single crochet. So I'm going to repeat this all the way around. Single in every stitch, on top of every bobble, and on into every single crochet. You single crochet until you get back to the beginning. Okay, I'm coming to the end. Still should have 66 stitches. Go ahead and slip stitch into your first single crochet like that. Now we're going to chain 1 and turn our work again. Now this time, instead of starting with a single crochet in that first stitch, we're going to start with a bobble into that first stitch. So we're going to go ahead and bobble right there into that same stitch. It might be kind of tight that we slip stitched into. And then I'm going to single crochet into the next stitch. And we're just going to kind of repeat the bobble row again. Now we're going to bobble into the next stitch. And single crochet into the next. Bobble into the next. And single crochet into the next. If you flip it around by starting with the bobble that time, now our bobbles are catty cornered, kind of like our drop stitches were. So we're just going to go ahead and repeat that pattern of the bobble crochet, single crochet, bobble crochet, single crochet, all the way around until you get back to the beginning. All right, I'm finishing up around 13. In my last stitch now, this round will be a single crochet, and then I'm going to end with the slip stitch into the top of my first bobble here. You'll still have your 66 stitches counting bobbles and single crochets. So for round 14, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work, and we're going to do a round of single crochet again. So we'll go right back into the very first stitch and single crochet, and now I'm going to work I'm off camera, sorry about that, 1 single crochet in every stitch around back to the beginning. So 1 on top of every bobble and 1 in every single crochet, on top of the bobble and then in the single crochet. And we're going to do this all the way around until we get back to our starting point. This is what it's starting to look like. Okay, I've made it to the end of round 14, and I went ahead and slip stitch in my first single crochet, 66 stitches still. Round 15, I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and I'm going to do another row of bobbles. This time I'm going to start by single crocheting into the first stitch, and then I'm going to bobble into the next. And single into the next, and then bobble into the next, single into the next, and then bobble into the next. And this is what I'm going to repeat all the way around. Single crochet into the next, and then bobble into the next. And if you turn it back around, you'll see that your bobbles are staggered once again. This will be our last row of bobbles. So I'm just going to repeat that bobble stitch, single crochet, repeat all the way around until I get back over here to my starting point. Alrighty, I made it to the end of round 15. My last stitch should have been a bobble, and go ahead and slip stitch into your first single crochet. 66 stitches still. Round 16, I'm going to chain one and then turn my work back around. We won't be turning our work anymore now. So now we'll just be working on the front. So what I'm going to do now is rounds of single crochet. So I'm going to go back into that first stitch. Oh, I'm hung up there. And I'm going to single crochet. And then I'm going to single crochet in every stitch all the way around until I get back to the beginning. Just like this. One single in every stitch until I get back to my starting point. Alright, I've made it to the end of round 16. I still have my 66 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into my first single crochet. I'm going to chain one. Now round 17, I'm just going to repeat round 16. And I'm just going to keep repeating round 16. So I'm just going to do rounds of one single crochet in every stitch. So I'm just going to go right back into the same stitch. Single crochet and single crochet one in every stitch. Sorry if you hear a loud noise in the background. It is pouring, thundering and pouring down rain here. So if you hear that, I apologize. So one single crochet in every stitch, round 17. When I get back to the beginning, I'm going to end with a slip stitch into my first single crochet. Chain one, round 18, I'm going to go around again, one single crochet in every stitch. So I'm just going to keep doing rounds of one single crochet in every stitch. You'll always have 66 stitches at the end of every round. Alright, I'm on round 19 now. I did those rounds of single crochet and I finished round 19. So for round 20, I'm going to do a round of decreases, still working single crochets though. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and end round 19 with slip stitching into my first single crochet, and you still should have 66 stitches. Now what I want to do is 4 single crochets in a row, and then I will do a single crochet decrease. So I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to start by going into the very first stitch. So that I want to do 4 in a row. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now what I'm going to do is decrease over the next 2. So I'm going to go in to the next one and draw up a loop, and then into the next one and draw up a loop. I'll have 3 loops that remain on my hook, and I'm going to yarn over and go through all 3 loops. So that's a single crochet decrease. It took 2 stitches and made it into 1. So now I'm going to repeat it again. 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to single crochet decrease over the next 2. So I'm going to go into the next one, draw up a loop, into the next one after that, draw up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3 loops. And that's what I'm going to repeat all the way around. 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches, and then single crochet decrease over the next 2. Just like that. 1 single in the next 4, and then single crochet decrease. Repeat that pattern all the way around back to your starting point. All right, I've made it to the end of round 20, and you should have ended in a decrease, and now you should have a total of 55 stitches. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to slip stitch into our first single crochet, but we're going to slip stitch into the back loop only. So you see how there's two loops. There's the one closest to you, that's the front, and the one furthest away is the back. We're going to slip stitch only into that back loop. Like that. Now I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to single crochet in that back loop only. And now I'm going to work around, putting one single crochet in every stitch, working in the back loop only of every stitch. I'm leaving the front loop exposed, which is going to create a ridge. So one single crochet all the way around. We're on round 21 now, working in the back loop only of every stitch. And you can see the ridge that it starts to make. So I'm going to continue working one single crochet every stitch, back loop only, until I get back to my starting point. Okay, I'm coming to the end of round 21. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to slip stitch again, but we're going to do it in the back loop only of the first single crochet, not the chain one, the very first single crochet that we did. Slip stitch into the back loop of it. Still have your 55 stitches. Now we're going to repeat that round again. So we're going to chain one, single crochet into the back loop only of that first stitch. And then I'm going to work around, putting one single crochet in the back loop of every stitch, all the way around. Just like that, till we get back to the beginning. All right, I made it to the end of round 22. 55 stitches still. I'm going to end with a slip stitch into the back loop of our first single crochet, and I'm going to repeat that row one more time. So slip stitch into the back loop there of your first single crochet. Still should have 55 stitches. Chain one. So we're on round 23 now. Single crochet back into that back loop, and then work one single crochet into the back loop of every stitch. So we're just repeating what we did on the last two rounds one more time. One single in the back loop of every stitch until you get back to your starting point. All right, I made it to the end of round 23. Let's do one more round and then we'll be finished. We're just going to go ahead and end round 23 with a slip stitch through both loops of our first single crochet. We're going through both loops now. No more back loops only. And we're going to chain one, and now we're just going to go right back into that same stitch and single crochet. And now I'm just going to work one single crochet in every stitch. I'm going through both loops now, just like normal. So no more back loop in it. Going through both loops, working one last round, round 24, of one single crochet in every stitch. This will finish the bag. You'll have 55 stitches when you get back around to the beginning. Well, it'll finish the main part of the bag. We still got to sew it up, I guess, at the bottom. But I'll go ahead and meet you back around here at the beginning. All right, I've made it to the end of round 24, 55 stitches. I went ahead and ended with a slip stitch there in my first single crochet, and then we can clip our yarn like that. We can hide that tail. Let's go ahead and sew up the bottom. So remember that seam that we have going on right here? Kind of straighten it out the best you can and fold it at that seam, and that way it will be on the side and it won't be quite as noticeable as if it was, you know, straight through the middle. To sew it up, you can use a yarn needle and a piece of yarn. I'm going to slip stitch mine together. So what I'm going to do is take my yarn in my hook. I got my seam along the side here, and I'm just going to take it and slip stitch the bottom together the best that I can. So I'm going to hold 2 pieces together here. I'm going to go through both ends with my hook. Pull my yarn through. And I'm going to chain 1. Now I'm going to go through the next 2 stitches. So the next stitch here and the next stitch on the other piece. And I'm going to slip stitch. Just like that. Oh, that got tangled up on me. And that's what I'm going to do the whole way down. So I'll go into the next piece on this one, on the front, and the next on the back, the next stitch on the back, and slip stitch. If you wanted to single crochet it together, you could probably do that. There would be a bit of a bump on the bottom, but that would work. Or the yarn needle. I do that quite often too, sew them together with the yarn needle, but since this is a thicker yarn, I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch the bottom together. I'm going to do this all the way across, just grabbing a stitch on both the sides and slip stitching it until I get it all sewed up. Just like that. Okay, I've made it to the end with my slip stitching. I'm going to go ahead and clip that off. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a second and I'm going to hide all my remaining tails that I have. So I got a yarn needle here with a thick eye opening there. So go ahead and just weave it in, your tails in the best that you can. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and do it off camera so you don't have to sit there and watch me do it. Alright, now what I'm doing is just I'm sewing on my O-rings for my handles. Now this, I just kind of eyeball the spacing. I don't count any stitches. Now if you didn't get these O-rings, that's fine. You can use any type of handle that you want. You can make homemade handles or any type of store-bought handle that you want. You know, Goodwill is always a great place. If you watch me, I get a lot of my handles from Goodwill. But this one was store-bought, other than the O-rings. But I just space, if you do happen to have O-rings, I'll go ahead and show you how I put them on. I just used a piece of yarn and the yarn needle, and I just sew them on. That's all I do. So I'm going to sew them on right at the bottom of this last row of single crochet that we did. And like I said, I just kind of eyeball the spacing, so it's not perfect, but I do my best to get it. And I just go right through. Let me turn it around. Be a little easier that way. Sure, I got my spacing about right. Yeah, I just go right through the ring and then right back. And I do this a few times until I know that it's on there tight and that it ain't gonna come off. This bulky yarn though, it's pretty strong. And this is how I'll sew on all 4 of my O-rings the exact same way. Just trying to get them as equal as possible. There we go. And when I think that they're on there pretty strong, I'll go ahead and flip it over and hide my tails. What I'll do is put a knot in it. I know you're not supposed to do that in crochet, but you know what? I do it all the time. Let's not tell anybody about that. That's between us. But I always put a little knot back here like this, nice and tight. And then I'll hide these. I'll go ahead and weave these 2 tails in, and that way I know it's not going to come undone. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to sew on my other O-rings to the other side. All right, there it is. I got my handles attached. It just clipped right onto the O-rings. That's it. That's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out all my other tutorials. If you look up in the left-hand corner of the screen right now, you'll see a picture of my face. Click on my face and you'll automatically be subscribed and you'll never miss any of my updates, tutorials, yarn reviews, giveaways, shopping trips, yarn hauls, all kinds of stuff. You don't want to miss out. Also, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.